God bless you all for tuning in. Today, we've got a story that'll keep you on the edge of your seat and make you question everything. Imagine this: a kid, just 13, finding himself face to face with Jesus after a tragedy he never saw coming. If you're ready for an unforgettable journey of hope, love, and some really tough lessons, hit that subscribe button, give us a thumbs up, and let's dive into Alex's story. I never thought I'd come this close to dying, especially not at just 13. I mean, death always seemed like something for people way older, far into the future. But on a freezing November night, everything I thought I knew got flipped upside down. Growing up, I was never one of the popular kids. I was shorter and quieter than most, and I kept to myself. That was just me. But starting in middle school, being different made me an easy target for bullies. Every day, they'd laugh at me, call me names, shove me around in the hallways, like it was all just a game. The worst part, no one ever seemed to notice, like I was invisible. It's funny, I felt like I was both invisible and somehow painfully obvious to everyone at the same time. The bullies had made me feel so small, like I had no worth, and every day I'd go home with their insults echoing in my head. My parents could tell I was struggling. They'd try to cheer me up, telling me that one day things would get better, that the other kids would grow up. I wanted to believe them, but honestly, I didn't see how things could ever change. Then one day, they surprised me with a little gray kitten with big blue eyes. I named him Whiskers, and from the first time I held him, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time: hope. Whiskers became my best friend, the one who'd stay with me when I felt low, purring beside me like he understood everything. He was a light in the dark, and every day after school, I'd run straight home just to be with him. But life has a way of throwing curveballs when you least expect it. When I was 13, my parents were going out to celebrate their wedding anniversary. It was one of those rare evenings when it was just going to be me and Whiskers at home. I was used to being alone from time to time, but that night, something felt off. There was an odd silence in the house, one that seemed to wrap around me, heavy and tense. Whiskers must have sensed it too, because he wouldn't leave my side. He followed me from room to room, like he was watching over me. Then, the phone rang. It was a call I'll never forget. My parents had been in a car accident. A drunk driver had lost control and collided with their car. The words on the other end of the line blurred together, and my heart felt like it stopped. They didn't make it. I remember the phone slipping from my hand and hitting the floor. In that moment, it felt like my whole world shattered. I was completely alone. The days that followed were a blur. I felt numb, like I was drifting through some terrible nightmare I couldn't wake up from. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. The only thing that got me through those days was Whiskers. He'd sit beside me as I cried, his soft purring the only thing keeping me grounded, reminding me that at least I wasn't totally alone. But as the days stretched into weeks and then months, I realized I'd have to learn to live without my parents. After that, I was sent to live with my aunt and uncle in a quiet, unfamiliar town. They were good people, kind in their own way, but it wasn't the same. They had their own routines, and though they tried to make me feel welcome, I felt out of place. I'd spend hours in my room, doing my best to keep busy with anything I could. I'd read books, draw, and spend as much time with Whiskers as possible. I threw myself into schoolwork, hoping maybe I could find some peace in the quiet focus. But making friends felt impossible. I'd become so closed off that I barely knew how to talk to people anymore, and every laugh I heard in the hallways took me back to the bullies' laughter. So I avoided everyone, choosing to keep to myself, even at lunch. Then, one evening, as I walked into the yard, my heart dropped. Whiskers was lying there, motionless, a deep wound on his neck. Panic surged through me. I picked him up and rushed to the vet, my mind racing with worst-case scenarios. The vet did his best to calm me down, but his face was grim. "We'll do what we can, but I won't make any promises," he said. The days that followed felt like torture. I couldn't think straight. My mind was consumed with fear and worry. Every time the vet called, my heart stopped. Each night, I lay in bed, replaying memories of my parents' accident, the feeling of losing them, and now, the thought of losing Whiskers. It was all too much. I felt trapped, like I was suffocating under the weight of everything I'd been through. One night, in complete despair, I made a decision that I'm not proud of. I wanted to escape the pain, even if just for a moment. I remembered some of the guys who used to bully me. They'd started hanging around a park nearby, looking rougher and tougher than I remembered. So, on a dark, rainy night, I went to them. I didn't know exactly what I was looking for, just that I needed to forget, to feel anything other than the crushing grief that had become my life. One of them handed me a bag of pills, saying they'd take the edge off. I got back home, stared at those pills, and felt a mix of shame and anger. I didn't want to be that kid, the one who needed something to get through the day. But the pain felt endless, and I didn't see any other way out. So I took a handful, hoping it would make everything go away, if only for a little while. But I'd taken too many. My vision started to blur, and my body grew heavy. I collapsed onto the floor, and everything went black. When I opened my eyes, I was somewhere I didn't recognize. It wasn't my living room. It was a place filled with warm, golden light. I felt this overwhelming peace, like every bit of pain I'd carried was lifted away. Then a figure appeared before me, someone I never expected to see. Jesus. I knew instantly who he was. He looked at me with eyes full of understanding, like he knew every part of my story without needing me to say a word. I looked into Jesus' eyes, my voice barely a whisper, as I asked the question that had haunted me for years. Why does it have to hurt so much? I tried so hard, but every time, it felt like I was right back where I started, empty, alone. Was I being punished for something? Was I supposed to go through all this? Jesus held my gaze, his eyes filled with a warmth I hadn't felt in years. Gently, he placed his hand on my shoulder, and in that simple touch, I felt something I thought I'd lost forever, a deep, unconditional love. "You've carried a lot of pain," he said, his voice gentle, yet resonating through me. "Sometimes the heaviest burdens are given to those with a strength they may not yet see in themselves. You went through these challenges not as a punishment, but as a path toward who you're meant to become. The pain you felt holds a promise of transformation." His words made me choke up, tears streaming down my face as I tried to understand what that meant. But he didn't rush me. He just looked at me with that same kindness. The loneliness, the loss, the times when you felt invisible, it wasn't because you weren't worthy, he said softly. In fact, it's the opposite. Your life holds a meaning you may not fully know yet, and the love you've carried, even in your hardest moments, is your gift. Hold on to that love, because it will be your guide. Then, Jesus led me to a small, familiar house. The door opened, and inside, I saw them, my parents. They looked so alive, happier than I'd ever seen them. I ran to them, hugging them tight, and for the first time, I felt whole again. My mom stroked my hair like she used to, and my dad looked at me with pride in his eyes. I wanted to stay there forever, but deep down, I knew I had to let go. Before I left, I asked about Whiskers, terrified I'd lose him too. My mom gave me a reassuring smile. He'll recover and be with you for a while longer, and when it's his time, he'll be here with us. As they faded away, I felt myself being pulled back, down from that warm, peaceful place. I woke up on my living room floor, disoriented, but somehow different. I felt a calm I hadn't known in years, a sense that maybe everything really did happen for a reason. Just then, the phone rang. It was the vet, calling to tell me that Whiskers had made a miraculous recovery. When Whiskers came home, I held him close, vowing to myself that I'd live differently. I wouldn't keep everyone at arm's length. I'd open myself up, even if it meant risking more pain. The next few years changed everything. I reconnected with people, made friends, and eventually even fell in love with someone who shares my love for animals. For the first time, I felt like there was something beautiful in life, something worth fighting for. So if you're listening to this, remember that your pain isn't the end. No matter how dark it gets, there's always a new beginning waiting. Every beat of your heart is a reminder that there's more to your story. God bless, and never forget, love is the most powerful thing we can give. Hold on to it, and know that there's always a way forward.